Over the past 2.5 years, 14 women have died under eerily similar circumstances. Each of them were found in a body of water, a river, a lake, or a stream. Most of these were declared not suspicious and ruled as accidental drownings. But when so many women vanish near water, with their bodies being recovered days or weeks later, you do start to wonder, what if these aren't just tragic accidents? What if somebody is targeting these women and using water to wash away the evidence? I do just want to start by giving my usual disclaimer that this video is for informational and educational purposes only. All the information that I'm talking about today is publicly available online, and I am presenting it with the utmost respect and care to the individuals involved and their families. It is not my intent to glorify or sensationalize the events. All that I'm aiming to do is inform people and promote awareness. All opinions that I express in this video are mine and mine alone. Hello. Welcome back to Murders and Mysteries with Moon. Today we are deep diving into something that is starting to haunt web sleuths, amateur detectives and families alike. It's also something that I have seen a lot of on TikTok, which, kind of prompted me to do this video. But today we are going to be talking about the potential that there is a serial killer on the loose in the UK. So as it stands at the moment, there are 14 women that are believed to be victims of this serial killer that seems to be stalking the waterways of the UK. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview on each of these women, their cases, in the order from when they started. So the one that was the longest time ago to the most recent one. And then we'll regroup after that. So let's get into it. So the first case I'm going to speak about is that of Margaret Tiscow. I'm sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. I'm not sure on the pronunciation. I couldn't find it online. So again, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Margaret was a 68-year-old resident of Badsey near Evesham in Worcestershire, and she went missing on the 24th of November 2021 after being last seen by her peers walking through the village. She was reported missing later that same day by members of her parish, who she was heavily involved with, and a search was launched, but unfortunately there was no sign of Margaret anywhere in the local area. Sadly, around 2 months later, on the 27th of January 2022, her body was recovered from the River Avon in Evesham after it was spotted floating in the water by a local riverboat resident at approximately 11:35 a.m. The location in which she was recovered was actually less than 3 miles from where she lived, and following her recovery, forensic examination using dental records took place in order to confirm her identity. Unfortunately, decomposition and water damage made it impossible to determine a cause of death, and the coroner recorded an inability to establish how she actually entered the water. The second case that I want to talk about is that of Michelle Petty. Now, Michelle was a 45-year-old woman who was reported missing from the Melrose area in the Scottish borders on the 3rd of September 2022. So this was in the same year that Margaret's body was recovered. Michelle Petty was last seen in the Galashiels area near the Hawthorne Road shops around 9 a.m. on the 9th of September 2022. So that was actually 6 days after she was reported missing. There was a reported sighting, but then after that there were no further sightings of Michelle Petty. Then on Sunday the 25th of September 2022 at approximately 12:20 p.m, Michelle's body was recovered from the River Tweed in Melrose near Lowood Bridge, and this is actually less than 2 miles from where she was last seen at the Hawthorne Road shops. Now, her death has been treated as unexplained by Police Scotland, and the inquiries into the circumstances of her death are still ongoing, but as of the date of recording, there have been no updates publicly released. The next case that I want to talk about is probably the most well-known case on this list, and I imagine that many of you have probably heard of this case, and that is the case of Nicola Bulley. Now, Nicola Bulley was a 45-year-old mortgage advisor and mother of 2 from Inskip in Lancashire. She disappeared from St Michael's on Wyre on the 27th of January 2023. Now, she dropped her daughters off at school and she then went to take her dog out for a walk along the River Wyre, and she was last seen walking that route at around 9 a.m, but she vanished without a trace. Now, Nicola was reported missing that same day after she failed to turn up to pick her daughters up from school. So a search was launched and her belongings were recovered from next to the river. Now, her phone was found, which was still connected to a Microsoft Teams call that she was in for work. And they also found her dog, Willow, along with its lead and harness running around the edge of the river, but there was no sign of Nicola anywhere in the area. A huge search was launched for Nicola. It was all over the UK news for weeks. I can remember it really clearly, and there was several searches of the River Wyre that she was last seen near, a lot of searches around the local area, the local woodland, and there was still no sign of Nicola. But then, around 3 weeks later, on the 19th of February 2023, Nicola's body was recovered from the River Wyre, just 1 mile from where she was last seen. The inquest was held in June 2023 and her death was ruled as accidental drowning due to cold water shock. Now, medical experts confirmed typical signs of drowning and said that there was no signs of any traumatic injuries, so suicide and foul play were ruled out. But many people do speculate that there is more to her story. There was a few things that didn't add up to a lot of people. You know, her Fitbit stopped recording just suddenly, her digital location just dropped off of tracking, and there was no witnesses, even though this was a very popular route and Nicola had been seen that morning by several people walking her dog. There was no witnesses to what actually happened to Nicola and how she ended up in the river. Now, the next case I'm going to talk about happened the same year as Nicola Bulley went missing, and this is the case of Gaynor Lord. Now, Gaynor was a 55-year-old mother of 3 who worked as a retail assistant at a Gerald's department store in Norwich. And on the 8th of December 2023, she left work early at around 2:45 p.m, when normally her shift wouldn't finish until around 4 p.m. Nobody knows why she left early, but we know that that was the last time she was seen. And she was reported missing later that evening after she failed to return home. An investigation was launched that same day and CCTV footage did capture her walking briskly through Norwich city centre. It seemed like she was heading towards the cathedral grounds, and thereafter she was seen again on CCTV walking towards Wensum Park. On that same evening, a number of her belongings were found scattered around Wensum Park. This included her clothing, her mobile phone, her glasses, and then later that same evening, her olive green coat was actually found floating in the River Wensum, and that was pulled out of the river and collected. Only a week later, on the 15th of December 2023, her body was recovered from the River Wensum, just a quarter of a mile downstream from where she was last seen. She was submerged 2.5 meters deep, and it is reported that she was completely naked. Shortly after, formal identification did take place from her belongings and also family confirmation. Norfolk police stated that her death was not being treated as suspicious, and her cause of death was formally recorded as immersion and drowning. Now, the coroner ruled her manner of death to be misadventure, stating that they believed it was Gaynor's intention to enter into the water, but it was not her intention to take her own life. So it was ruled as misadventure rather than accidental drowning or suicide. The fifth case I want to talk about is that of Lucy Charles. Now, this only happened around 7 days after Gaynor Lord's body was found, so all of these cases were in quite a short space of time. Lucy Charles was a 39-year-old woman from Bangor-on-Dee on the border of North Wales and Shropshire. Now, she was last seen on the 22nd of December 2023 at approximately 5:30 p.m, and she was seen on CCTV to be walking past a pub called the Royal Oak, which was on Station Road in Bangor-on-Dee, and this was the last time that Lucy was seen alive. Lucy was reported missing the following day on the 23rd of December 2023 after she failed to return home. Then, just 2 days later, on Christmas Day, on December 25th, Lucy's personal belongings were found on one of the banks of the River Dee, and this included her handbag, an empty bottle of wine, and a partially drunk bottle of vodka, which suggests that she had been sitting on the riverbank and drinking there. Then, around 3 weeks later, on the 12th of January 2024, police divers from the Northwest Underwater Search Team recovered a body from the River Dee. This was just 2.5 miles downstream from where her belongings had been found, and her body was recovered from the water near Dongry Hall Farm. Formal identification took place shortly after, and Lucy's family were informed. Now, the inquest was held on the 30th of May 2024, and the coroner ruled her manner of death as misadventure. Her cause of death was listed as immersion in water with acute alcohol intoxication. At the time that Lucy's body was found, she had a blood alcohol level of 308 milligrams per litre, which is more than 3 times the legal drink drive limit in the UK. And also trace amounts of codeine were found in her system, which the coroner believes may have amplified kind of sedative effects. So as a result, the coroner ruled that there was no evidence of foul play or evidence of intent to die, and the coroner ruled that it was most likely that she had been drinking on the riverbank and that she slipped into the river either due to the slippery conditions or due to her intoxication, and subsequently she tragically drowned. Now, the sixth case that I want to talk about on this list is that of Catherine Corrie. Catherine Corrie, otherwise known as Katie or Kate to her family and friends, was a 49-year-old woman from Northamptonshire. Now, she was last known to be alive on the 8th of February 2024. Now, police have noted that her whereabouts between that date and the date that her body was recovered remain unclear, and they are still to this day appealing for public assistance to help fill that gap. Now, just 3 days later after she was reported missing, on the 11th of February 2024 at approximately 8 a.m, a body was recovered from the River Nene near Mill Lane in Kislingbury. I'm from the UK, but I have no idea how to pronounce half of these places, so I'm very sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. If you are from this area, please correct me in the comments because I have no idea how to pronounce it, but I'm going to go with Killingbury. Now, Northamptonshire police identified the body as that of Catherine Corrie after liaising with her next of kin and confirming her ID through formal procedures. There's no inquest results, no cause of death or verdict that have been publicly reported as of now. But yet the police have come out and stated that her death is not being treated as suspicious and that there is no indication of foul play, even though it doesn't seem like they have any of the details. If the gap between when she was reported missing and when her body was found, that's a 3-day gap. And they have no idea what happened during those 3 days, but apparently her death is not suspicious. Now, the 7th case, we're halfway there. The 7th case I want to talk about is that of Laura Stanley. Now, Laura Stanley was a 38-year-old mother of 2 who was originally from Derbyshire but was living in Stockport in Greater Manchester. Now, a lot of details surrounding Laura's case are unclear. There's not a lot of information out there online. I've found as much as I could, but a lot of it is unclear. However, it is believed that she was last known to be alive in January of 2024. Around 2 months later, on the 21st of March 2024, a body was recovered from the River Mersey at approximately 11 a.m. near Chorlton Water Park. The body was believed to have been in the water for some time before the discovery, with forensic work suggesting a gap that was somewhere between several weeks or several months. This meant that initial identification was near enough impossible due to the level of decomposition and water damage, and the remains had no personal identification items or visible jewellery. So the investigators enlisted the Face Lab at Liverpool John Moores University to produce a facial reconstruction, which then led to recognition from a family member of Laura Stanley. And shortly after, a DNA match through a relative did confirm that the body recovered was that of Laura Stanley. Now, Laura Stanley's death is currently unexplained. There is no announced cause of death, no inquest conclusion that is available at present. Greater Manchester Police Major Incident Team continue to investigate Laura's last known movements, like, how she came to be in the water and the circumstances regarding her death. But at the present moment, her death is unexplained. The 8th case we're talking about is that of Claire Driver. Now, Claire was a 44-year-old woman from Silkstone in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, and she was last seen on the 24th of June 2024 on CCTV around Silkstone Lane and Bullhaugh Lane in Silkstone. She was reported missing by family members later that same day after she failed to return home. A search operation was launched over the following weeks that spanned a 7.8 square mile radius, but on July the 29th, 2024, Claire's case was moved into a long-term missing persons category and she was presumed dead. Finally, on the 14th of September 2024, a body was recovered from a shallow woodland stream off of Kynemore Lane in Silkstone, and this is around 1.2 miles from where Claire was last seen, and it is stated that the body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Formal identification took place using fingerprints, and the body was confirmed to be 44-year-old Claire. The inquest was held between September 2024 and March 2025, where the coroner returned an open verdict with the cause of death and manner of death ruled as unexplained. Potential victim number 9 is Victoria Taylor, aka Vix to friends and family. She was a 34-year-old care home nurse and mother of 1 from Malton in North Yorkshire. Now, Vix was last seen on the 30th of September 2024, where she left home at 9 a.m. and was seen on several pieces of CCTV footage. She was first seen at a BP petrol station at approximately 11:35 a.m, then again at Malton bus station at around 11:53 a.m, and finally walking towards a riverside playground at approximately 12:30 p.m. Personal items belonging to Victoria were later found near the River Derwent, which prompted a search of the waterway. And at approximately 11:45 a.m. on October the 22nd, 2024, which again was around 3 weeks since Vix was last seen, a body was recovered from the River Derwent by North Yorkshire Police underwater search teams. The body was recovered from the same sort of area as where the personal belongings of Victoria Taylor were found, and shortly after, formal identification took place and the family were informed. Now, the preliminary cause of death has been ruled as drowning. However, the full hearing has been adjourned pending further findings. Not clear what those further findings are, but we are still waiting for an update on that as of yet. So if anything comes out in the future about the inquest, I will keep you updated on that. Now, the next case is case 10 and 11, potential victims 10 and 11, because there are two people involved in this case, and this is that of Henrietta and Eliza Husty. Henrietta and Eliza were both aged 32, and they were identical sisters, originally from Hungary but living in Aberdeen in Scotland. They were part of a set of triplets, which is quite rare to see, and they moved to Aberdeen in 2015 and were saving to buy a house there. Henrietta worked as a barista in a local coffee shop, and Eliza worked as a housekeeper in one of the local hotels. Now, the identical sisters were last seen on the 7th of January 2025 at approximately 2:10 in the morning, where CCTV captured them crossing Victoria Bridge on Market Street in Aberdeen, and they were both heading towards a footpath that ran alongside the River Dee. They were reported missing later that same day by their landlady and their family members, and their last known movements, that CCTV of them crossing the bridge and heading onto a footpath beside the River Dee, sparked an investigation and a search of the River Dee. Now, the search lasted for multiple weeks and they used a lot of resources. They were using divers, they were using cadaver dogs, air support, marine units, drones to try and recover the sisters. And eventually, on the 27th of January 2025, the authorities stood down the search for the sisters in the River Dee, but they did keep inquiries open. Now, sadly, only days after that search was stood down on the 31st of January 2025, two bodies were recovered from the River Dee. One was recovered from Queen Elizabeth Bridge and the other was recovered near Victoria Bridge. Now, the body recovered near the Queen Elizabeth Bridge was actually found in the morning of the 31st of January 2025 and is believed to be that of Henrietta. And then in the same day, a second body near Victoria Bridge was recovered in the evening of the 31st of January, and that was believed to be the body of Eliza. Now, the body of Henrietta was formally identified first using DNA, using dental records, and the family were notified. The family then went on to identify the second body as that of Eliza. Both deaths were attributed to drowning, and police stated that there was no evidence of foul play, although the full circumstances of their deaths do remain unknown. The sister's father himself has publicly stated that he believes some sort of foul play was involved in the sisters' deaths. The 12th case I want to talk about is Harriet Davies. Now, Harriet Davies was a 24-year-old resident of Diglis in Worcester, and she was known locally as a regular dog walker. She was last seen on the 25th of February 2025, leaving her home to go for a walk along the River Severn. Now, this was a route that was familiar to Harriet because this is a route that on a normal day she would take with her dog. However, on this day, she didn't have a dog with her. She just went for a walk by herself along the River Severn, and she was reported missing by family later that day after she failed to return home from that walk. Now, a search was launched by the West Mercia Police, and just 2 days later, on the 27th of February 2025, police divers assisted by boat crews and drone support did recover a body during the search of the River Severn. Formal identification took place shortly after, and the next of kin confirmed that the body was that of 24-year-old Harriet. Now, although further details are not available at the moment, West Mercia Police have stated that her death is not being treated as suspicious. Again, even though there has been no inquest as of yet into the death, they have just immediately said that it's not suspicious. The 13th case is that of Tracy Harrison. Now, Tracy was a 42-year-old woman and resident of Bingham in Nottinghamshire, and she was last seen on Saturday the 7th of June 2025 at around 9 p.m. She was seen on CCTV at a local Lidl in Chapel Lane, Bingham. Tracy was reported missing later that same day after she failed to return home, and Nottinghamshire Police issued an appeal for information as concerns grew for her welfare, and a search of the local area began. Just 4 days later, on Wednesday the 11th of June 2025, shortly before 1 p.m, a body was recovered from the River Trent near Gunthorpe, which is just 3 miles from where Tracy was last seen. Now, Tracy's family were informed, and once police inquiries were completed, they did identify the body and they confirmed that it did belong to Tracy Harrison. Now, you're going to start noticing a pattern here. I'm going to start sounding like a broken record, but Nottinghamshire Police have stated that her death is not being treated as suspicious, though investigators described the circumstances surrounding her death as unexplained. No immediate cause of death has been released, but a file is to be prepared for the coroner for post-mortem assessment. But as of now, no coroner verdict or cause of death has been published. But again, I'll update you on that if it does get published sometime soon. Now, the last and most recent case that I'm going to talk about is that of Rachel Booth. Now, this has been another story that has been all over the UK news recently, all over TikTok, all over social media. So you might have heard of this one as well. Now, Rachel Booth was a 38-year-old mother of 3 from Barnton near Northwich in Cheshire, and she was described by her loved ones as strong, warm, and deeply devoted to her family. Now, on the 19th of July 2025, so really not that long ago, only a couple of weeks ago, sometime before 3 a.m, Rachel left home to go for a jog, which apparently is something that she did regularly, so this wasn't out of character for her to be going for a jog in the early hours of the morning. Now, at 3:50 a.m, she was seen on CCTV at a Shell petrol station in Sandyway, where she purchased a bottle of wine and a carton of milk. And this was the last known sighting of Rachel alive. Now, later into that morning, when she failed to return home, her family became concerned and reported her missing to the police. Now, between the 19th and the 21st of July 2025, Cheshire Constabulary did launch a major search, including door-to-door inquiries, sniffer dogs, drones, underwater teams, and police believed that Rachel Booth had travelled to the Delamere Forest area and the Oakmere Lake area. Now, they haven't stated what evidence or what information led them to believe that she had travelled to this area. All we know is that they believed that that is where she had headed to. So the majority of the search efforts were focused around that area. Sadly, on the afternoon of the 21st of July 2025, police divers located a body in Lake Oakmere, around 3 miles from where Rachel was last seen on that petrol station CCTV. The family were informed of the discovery, and on the 22nd of July 2025, the following day, formal identification took place of the body, and it was confirmed by her family to be Rachel Booth. Now, as of the date of this recording, which is the 1st of August 2025, no official cause of death or further details have been published on this case, which isn't really surprising because it literally did only happen a couple of weeks ago and these things do take time. However, surprise, surprise, Cheshire Constabulary have stated that there were no signs of foul play and her death is not being treated as suspicious. Who would have guessed? But I will update you if any more information does come out about that in upcoming weeks. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like all of these cases repeat an eerily similar story. Women vanish, personal belongings are recovered from the water's edge, and days to weeks later, their bodies resurface. Now, at first, these cases seem isolated, but over time, something disturbing begins to emerge. And there has been a significant rise in the number of women found in UK bodies of water in recent years. In the year 2022, there was only 7 bodies found in water. And by early 2024, there had been 28 women's bodies found in water. Many of them were fully clothed. Many showed no signs of traumatic injury. Several of them, as you probably noticed from when I was going over the cases, several of them were missing for round about 21 days. And yet, despite these patterns, there's been no national investigation, no joint task force, and no public warning. Reddit, which is one of my favourite places on the entire internet, I'm not going to lie, but Reddit, of course, has noticed these patterns. On Reddit/conspiracy and Reddit/UK true crime, users have started asking questions. One thread compiled Google search data on women found in water, showing an undeniable spike in the last 2 years. And another person said, "Too many bodies, not enough questions. How many women have to die before we admit that there is a pattern?" The theories vary. Like, some think it's a copycat killer who is using waterways to avoid forensic evidence. Others think it's a predator who is targeting vulnerable women late at night or in the early hours of the morning when it's still dark, and is letting the water clean up the crime. Now, commonly referenced by theorists is the infamous smiley face killer theory. And the kind of basis of this theory is that in the US, there were over 40 young, otherwise healthy men that were found in bodies of water after nights out. Now, most of the deaths, similar to this theory that we're talking about today, were ruled as accidental drownings, but a lot of people began to notice that at multiple locations where these bodies were found, where they were recovered from the water, there seemed to be graffiti of a smiley face near to where the body was. And many people began to believe that that was some sort of a signature or a calling card for a kind of organised group or a gang of serial killers that were operating around the United States. And it made a lot of people, specifically in Reddit/UK True Crime, it made a lot of them wonder, could this be something that's happening in the UK? Is it possible that all of these women found in rivers were a result of some sort of organised gang of serial killers? So let's look at the official narrative versus public doubt. What are the authorities saying? So you probably noticed during the breakdown of the cases that most of the deaths are being ruled as not suspicious, with no signs of foul play even before post-mortems were completed. And that is exactly what frustrates so many people online, is that there is a sense of premature closure, that deaths were being written off as accidents before even having proper scrutiny, that patterns are being ignored, whether it's deliberately or otherwise. I mean, there are a few historical parallels. I mean, this kind of thing has happened before. If multiple victims found in water sounds familiar, it should. I mean, in the 1960s in London, the so-called Jack the Stripper murdered at least 6 women and dumped them in different parts of the River Thames. They were found naked, hence the infamous name of Jack the Stripper, with missing teeth and signs of sexual violence. Now, that killer was never caught. And again, in Manchester, rumours of the Pusher made headlines, which were accusations that there was a serial killer whose MO was pushing people into canals or rivers or bodies of water at night. Now, police denied these accusations, but nearly 90 unexplained drownings happened in 10 years. Now, an academic that looked into these drownings and into the statistics stated that it was too statistically unlikely to be pure coincidence. Now, waterways have long since been a killer's perfect cover. Fast-moving water, DNA washed away, time delays in bodies being recovered, can erase forensic evidence. It's just, this isn't the first time that this kind of thing has happened. Let's pause though. Let's just take a breather. Let's think. Okay, could all of these incidents be tragic but completely unrelated drownings? Of course they could. Of course they could. The UK has over 1,500 rivers and countless other lakes, reservoirs, canals. Accidental drownings, especially amongst people with mental health issues, physical disabilities, these things do happen, and police need evidence to investigate them. Without any signs of trauma or violence, there is very little to go on. But what about intentional targeting of women who appear vulnerable? What if someone's watching those walking alone at night, taking advantage of poorly lit paths and riverside trails? These aren't questions of proof. These are questions of patterns, questions of possibility. So here is what we know. At least 14 women, maybe more, all found in water with no clear suspects, and most ruled as not suspicious without much public inquiry. But the public is asking, Reddit is compiling, journalists are digging, and you're watching. You're wondering, could something more sinister be happening here? If even one of those women's deaths was intentional, then we owe it to every single woman on this list to demand answers. But what do you think? Is all of this media hype, a conspiracy of coincidences, or is there someone targeting women and using water to erase the evidence and make it look like a tragic accident? Share your theories with me in the comments. I would be really, really interested in hearing your take on this and what you think about this theory. This is something that was heavily requested and something that I've seen a lot of on TikTok, so I'm hoping that I'll have some interesting comments to read. Now, hit subscribe for more true crime, more unsolved mysteries, more cold cases. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I would really appreciate it. It helps YouTube to push the video out. And, you know, if no one is connecting the dots, maybe it's up to us to connect the dots. So let's build a nice little community here where we can talk about and solve these things together. Until next time, thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay observant, and stay spooky. I'll see you next week.